Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
Good evening. It's Tuesday, March 15th. Thank you for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. It started with the serving of an eviction notice, and it ended with a woman shot dead and an officer stabbed. Tonight, the video is being released, and the questions are being asked. Why did it happen the way that it did? KPBS reporter John Carroll now, and we warn you, this story does contain some disturbing images.
The video comes from law enforcement body-worn cameras. It begins with a deputy serving an eviction notice on March 3rd to 47-year-old Jan Lee in her condo in Little Italy. Lee is holding what appears to be a meat cleaver when she opens the door. Things go downhill quickly after the deputy hands her the paperwork.
Okay, here's a notice to evict. Okay?
What?
It's your notice for... Put the knife down right now or I'm gonna put your knife down.
Lee says the deputy might be an imposter, and after some more yelling back and forth, she eventually throws the eviction paperwork back out and slams her door.
Drop the knife. Drop the...
The deputy calls for backup, and soon other deputies, along with San Diego police officers and a canine unit, show up. The sheriff's department says during this time, a building manager tells deputies that Lee threatened a maintenance worker with a knife a couple of days before. Efforts to get Lee to cooperate continue, but eventually the deputies and officers decide to go in and get her. She's seen peering out of a bedroom door, and soon an officer fires beanbag rounds at her. That's when the San Diego Canine Unit is deployed and Lee comes charging out of the bedroom toward officers. The sheriff's department froze video from one of the cameras showing the moment Lee stabbed a San Diego officer. She died after several deputies and an officer opened fire.
An eviction notice shouldn't turn into a death sentence.
Tasha Williamson is a community advocate. She says she's dedicated to helping anyone experiencing injustice. She says Lee's death was unnecessary.
They should have used de-escalation training. And de-escalation, they did not have to enter her home because she was not a threat to anyone.
The incident is under investigation by the San Diego Police Department. Williamson says that's a problem because she says police shouldn't be investigating other police. We asked for comments from the department and from CLRB, the Citizens Law Enforcement Review Board. Both declined because the investigation is ongoing. The entire incident lasted about 45 minutes. Whatever the investigation finds, Williamson says this is yet another tragic outcome that she contends could have been avoided if proper de-escalation techniques had been used. John Carroll, KPBS News.
It's now estimated more than 3 million Ukrainian refugees have fled the war. And with each passing hour, Russian troops bomb their way closer to major cities. An update now from reporter Chris Nguyen.
Kyiv under attack. At least 4 buildings in residential areas were hit by Russian missiles Tuesday morning, killing at least 4 people, according to the mayor. New satellite images show widespread destruction across Ukraine as volunteers join the effort to fight.
For Ukrainians, it's natural to protect our independence because it's independence war. And plus, definitely, we are proud to protect democratic values and principles.
The head of UN's refugee agency saying more than 3 million people have fled Ukraine since the start of the Russian invasion last month. The UN says more than half of that total have fled to Poland.
We are slowly becoming overwhelmed, and that's why we make a plea for help from the international community.
The prime ministers of Poland, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic traveling to Kyiv Tuesday to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the country's prime minister to offer their support.
This is not a time for countries to pretend like they can stay neutral on this particular conflict.
The head of NATO announcing leaders will convene for a summit next week to discuss possible next steps. Zelensky addressing the Canadian Parliament Tuesday ahead of his planned virtual meeting with Congress Wednesday.
They already killed 97 Ukrainian children. We are not asking for much. We're asking for justice, for real support, which will help us to prevail, to defend, to save life all of the world.
Chris Wynn, KPBS News.
Governor Gavin Newsom was in Solano County today helping pack emergency relief supplies for Ukraine. The governor also signed an executive order directing state agencies and departments to ensure their contractors are complying with economic sanctions imposed on Russia. The war in Ukraine is being watched worldwide. Images spread instantly through social media and the internet, finding their way into classrooms everywhere. KPBS education reporter MG Perez takes us to a North County high school where students are studying history in real time.
Russia has in recent days asked China specifically for military equipment, including drones.
Mark Vanover starts his first period class every morning with a discussion on the latest news from the war zone in Ukraine. This class is an elective called Current Issues, offered here at Canyon Crest Academy in Carmel Valley. 17-year-old senior Elizabeth Campbell Budilenko sits in the front row watching history unfold on a computer screen and a projector, detailing the war that has directly impacted her mother's family.
And they evacuated from Ukraine and crossed the border. And so thankfully they're safe in Poland.
Elizabeth tells her story and does not mince words.
Terrible. The war going on. The whole thing's a mess. Shouldn't have happened in the first place. There's so many things that could have gone differently, should have gone differently.
What's happening to the people and the human story that is part of a war that textbooks don't always get well documented because of the past and the way things worked then.
Polls are not always super accurate.
Across the Canyon Crest campus, Stuart Pollock is teaching U.S. government. He has some seniors old enough to vote in the next election. Mr. Pollock is committed to the truth in his classroom.
It is always a challenge to make sure that the sources that we're using are accurate as can be, and also to help the students understand how to make those decisions and those judgments for themselves as they get older.
18-year-old Sasha Rudakov is a Russian-American with families and friends still in the war zone.
Many people think that this is Russia versus Ukraine, but in reality it's Putin versus Ukraine. Most Russians that support this don't know any better.
And Frankie Salceda is 18 years old and believes the NATO coalition will end this war with military strength when the time comes.
So it's just really up to the Russians at this point. If they attack, say, Poland, then they're basically signing their own death warrant.
A war of words that continues as intensely as the conflict on the battlefield. MG Perez, KPBS News.
50 years after it opened, the San Diego VA will become the first VA named after a female veteran of color. KPBS military reporter Steve Walsh has the story.
March 15, 1972, with the Vietnam War winding down, the San Diego VA hospital opened its doors in La Jolla. Dr. Arnold Gass remembers that first year.
So I first walked into this building October 2nd, 1972. It had been open for 7 months as an emergency because of the fact that the Sepulveda VA had suffered damage from an earthquake.
The VA had clinics in San Diego, but before 1972, San Diego veterans used the Naval Hospital, or they had to be sent to VA hospitals north of the county. Back then, the challenge was to adapt to the Vietnam vets who saw the VA as an extension of the war effort.
But Vietnam veterans have come here. Special programs were instituted as a result of them. Agent Orange program, the notion that environmental hazards are problematic for veterans, and these things have all evolved out of the agitation and the political presence of the Vietnam-era veterans.
Post 9/11 veterans are forcing another change in the system. This group of vets are 20% female and more diverse. The VA has been struggling to convince female veterans that they are welcome at the VA. Ironically, the day before the 50th anniversary of the San Diego VA, President Biden signed a bill naming the hospital for Captain Jennifer Moreno. The 25-year-old Army nurse was killed in Afghanistan.
It'll be a place in which people should remember why it's called the Veterans Facility and why we need to take care of veterans of all types, all genders, all gender choices. That's what's going to happen for me.
The San Diego VA is the first VA in the country named after a woman veteran of color. Steve Walsh, KPBS News.
You've seen the rising prices at the store, and a new report shows costs are climbing with each passing month. The Producer Price Index rose 10% for the 12-month period that ended in February. This is the first time the index has hit double digits since keeping the data back in 2010. And when it comes to home prices, San Diego County has seen a spike up 16%. The median price of an existing single-family home is now $888,000, and that's up from $765,000 1 year ago. Statewide, the average median home price rose to $771,270, and that's up from $699,000 a year ago. Across the country, employers are ramping up plans to welcome workers back to the office. But as Pete Muntean reports, with gas prices at record highs, it's going to cost them.
Across the country, companies are welcoming workers back to the office. Just this week, tech giant Twitter opened its doors, along with banking Goliath Wells Fargo, to its 250,000 employees. New data from research firm Inrich shows commuting has shot up 25% just this year, despite soaring gas prices.
Right now times are tough, and I'm trying to make ends meet and stuff. $6 is really impact me.
It's not fair.
Sarah Kirikasian is turning to the LA Metro. In California, gas prices are among the highest in the nation.
It's very expensive. It's like an extra $200 a month just for my car. That's not including my daughter and my husband.
Moody's Analytics broke down the costs. It found that high gas prices will force families to spend another $1,300 a year, roughly 1% of the average household budget. Moody's analyst Scott Hoyt says that makes remote work even more enticing.
If they force people into the office, they're forcing them to incur, a larger expense than they have in the past.
COVID has really been this great reset.
Bill Eiley of the Texas A&M Transportation Institute says the pandemic has proven to companies that remote work is possible and workers may still be able to push back.
It's probably easier to have a conversation with an employer about, hey, this is really starting to notice this in my pocketbook.
Even still, the Biden administration sees the value in coming back to the office.
It's time for America to get back to work and fill our great downtowns again with people.
And that was Pete Muntean reporting. Here in San Diego County, we saw another slight increase in gas prices today. The average price for a gallon of regular is now $5.77. The average has risen by more than $1 during a 21-day streak of increases. San Diego County Supervisors Jim Desmond and Joel Anderson are joining other California Republicans in calling on the governor to suspend the gas tax for 1 year. San Diego's first ever guaranteed income project is officially underway, with families getting their first checks today. KPBS race and equity reporter Christina Kim has more on the San Diego for Every Child pilot project.
150 households across San Diego County are getting a check for $500 today as part of San Diego's first guaranteed income program.
I am super excited to see families actually get the money that they've been waiting for, and us to be able to support them in this way.
Kia Pollard is the director of San Diego for Every Child. She's been signing up families for the past few months and has heard firsthand the impact this additional money will have on them.
I've heard families say things like, I want to use this to pay for my family's medical bills. I want to find childcare for my son, daughter. I want to use this money to save. One family was talking to me about how she'll use this money to take her children out, to have fun and do some bonding stuff. And all of those things are so important to what we're doing and how we want to strengthen and support families.
The $2.9 million pilot program is managed by Jewish Family Services and will run for 2 years, with families receiving $500 a month. To qualify, families had to have a child under 12 years old and live in one of the 4 priority zip codes, which include the neighborhoods of Encanto, Paradise Hills, San Ysidro, and National City. Unlike other public benefit programs, the money comes with no strings attached, says Pollard.
You are deserving of support because you are in need of support. And we're going to make it easy for you to both access it, limiting the hurdles and the bureaucratic conversations around deservedness and worthiness, and say, how to best use the money to support your family in the ways that they need.
Pollard says while the concept may be new to many, it's actually rooted in the 1960s civil rights movement. Martin Luther King Jr., the Black Panthers, and Black women organizers advocated for the program throughout the civil rights era.
For me, when I think about this work and the origins and how it gained traction and having it being rooted in Black liberation is just so powerful. And when you see that and the ways in which it can liberate all people, it's even more powerful.
Once the 2-year pilot is completed, researchers from the University of Pennsylvania will evaluate San Diego's program to see what worked and what didn't. KPBS will be checking in and bringing you stories about the program throughout the next 2 years. Christina Kim, KPBS News.
Well, it's going to be a little bit more of an active pattern here across Southern California over the next couple of days, more so as we head into the weekend. The winds will turn offshore here Thursday into Friday, which will mean some warmer temperatures returning to close out the work week. But we are tracking this powerful storm this weekend. It's going to be dropping southward out of the northwest. That brings gusty winds and also, I think, the possibility of some rain chances towards the end of the weekend. Tonight, temperatures get back down into the 50s in Oceanside, low 50s in Chula Vista, 59 degrees in Borrego Springs, and 40s for you tonight in Mount Laguna. Wednesday, you'll notice the cooler air staying well off to our north. Some of that is going to spill further south, but overall, it's not going to be anything major in the forecast here for our Wednesday. Temperatures getting up into the upper 60s in Oceanside, 73 for you out towards Ramona, mid-50s in the mountains, 75 out towards El Cajon. And then Thursday, dry weather continues here across much of the southwest. Moving forward, though, I want to point out some of those changes as we head into the weekend. Thursday and Friday in the low 70s, but after that, we'll see that drop into the 60s with clouds increasing Saturday into Sunday. I think we might be adding in some rain chances there in the forecast for you near the coast towards the end of the weekend. Further inland, temperatures go from the 70s on Wednesday back into the 80s on Thursday and Friday. Clouds increasing Saturday with temperatures dramatically dropping into the 60s as we head into Sunday. In the mountains, not seeing much of change here from day in, day out through Saturday. Winds picking up, though, this weekend, and then temperatures bottoming out from Saturday to Sunday, dropping almost 15 degrees for daytime highs. Then in the deserts, we go from the 80s over the next couple of days back down to about 70 degrees by the time we get towards Sunday, and should see some gusty winds picking up there to start off the weekend, too. For KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Jessica Pash.
A former Coronado resident and Army veteran was sentenced today to 3 months in prison for taking part in the breach of the U.S. Capitol building. 34-year-old Jeffrey Alexander Smith pleaded guilty last year to a misdemeanor count of parading, demonstrating, and picketing in a Capitol building. Prosecutors say he moved a barricade placed in front of closed doors, allowing rioters inside. The sentence also includes 2 years probation and 200 hours of community service. The Marines in San Diego are investigating allegations of white supremacist ties among their ranks. These allegations relate to a larger trend of extremist crimes by people with military links. KPBS's Amitha Sharma says top brass recently changed policies to meet the moment, but some say they fall short.
We need your help. I'm talking, of course, about extremism and extremist ideology. Views and conduct that run counter to everything that we believe in, and which can actually tear at the fabric of who we are as an institution.
This plea from the nation's first black Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, weeks after the January 6th insurrection, came with a request for rank and file to revisit their oath.
Read those words again. Consider what they really mean. And think about the promise that you made to yourselves and to your teammates and to your fellow citizens.
With nearly 15% of the January 6th insurrectionists tied to the military, the Pentagon also turned inward. Late last year, the Department of Defense updated its policy on radicalism to ban service members from actively participating in gangs or groups that advocate extremist ideologies. The active participation includes fundraising, attending rallies, recruitment, and training.
What they didn't do, however, is add a prohibition of membership in white nationalist organizations.
He says the military's decision not to ban membership in extremist groups is a mistake.
The act of joining an organization and making that leap to become a member is already a sign that you're deeply enmeshed inside that organization's ranks.
The issue surfaced in San Diego earlier this year over reports that the Marine reservist son of former local Republican Party leader Tony Kovarik tried to join a notorious neo-Nazi group. 21-year-old Victor Kovarik allegedly applied to be in the Patriot Front, which the Southern Poverty Law Center calls a white nationalist hate group. Christine Chavala, a black Navy vet who served in San Diego, says racism and extremism remain present in the military.
It's masked with things like favoritism. It's masked with some manipulation in different arenas. I won't go into too much details on that, but I just think that it's definitely still there. It's just well hidden.
A Marine spokesman told KPBS that the Corps is investigating Kovarik, but it's unclear if he would be in violation of the military's new policy unless he did more than just join the Patriot Front. For example, the new rules forbid service members from liking or sharing extremist posts on social media. William Braniff is director of the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism. He says the constant presence of social media makes this change vital, but he has heard concerns.
There's a lot of pushback, like, this is overreach and the DOD is going to kick somebody out of the military for retweeting or reposting something. Isn't that silly? Well, no, not at all. I think what the DOD has recognized is that social media matters.
However, the military is still not screening the social media of its service members, even though polling of people in the military in recent years shows roughly a third have encountered racist and white supremacist views.
So the problem is endemic, but when those service members go to report that, it's unclear as to how that is handled, as to whether or not there will be clear procedures for discipline and for response.
Burkhart says it's a sharp contrast with the military's policy on other conduct. Consider that proof of adultery by a service member can lead to docked pay, discharge, and even confinement. Chavala, the Navy vet, believes it will be tough to convince the military brass to take the same hard line on extremists.
So deeply rooted into everything that they do, if they started to unravel that thread, it's going to break apart a huge structure that they've already built, causing them to have to rebuild it all over again.
Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
Governor Newsom has signed a law overturning a court ruling that would have capped enrollment at UC Berkeley. The state legislature unanimously approved the new law yesterday, giving universities more time to comply with requirements that they consider how adding more students would impact the environment. It ensures that about 2,600 more students get to attend UC Berkeley this fall. San Diego Oasis officially opened what they're calling a tech tank today, a place where seniors can come and learn how to use computer and smartphone technology. KPBS science and technology reporter Thomas Fudge has the story.
3, 2, 1.
La Mesa councilmen, people from San Diego Oasis, and donor Cox Communications showed up to cut a ribbon to a new place where seniors can learn digital skills. Simona Valenchuta is CEO of San Diego Oasis. She says she wants to close the digital divide that stands in the way of elderly people unfamiliar with computers. That divide was obvious during the pandemic when getting a vaccine appointment online became quite a challenge. But she said seniors are resilient.
With proper support, they can adapt and be continually engaged and independent.
This is the Tech Tank. It's a glass-enclosed room with homey furniture at the headquarters of San Diego Oasis at the Grossmont Center Mall. Nadine Bruders is a senior who has trained with San Diego Oasis and now volunteers for them. She says fear can be a factor.
I think most seniors are afraid they're going to do something wrong. And
with that, they won't do it. They'll stop unless you're shown. But you have to have patience with them, too, because they don't pick it up right away.
One of those patient teachers at the Tech Tank is Raul Bernal Gonzalez, who has a computer science degree and is bilingual. He says some of the challenges the elderly face are familiar to all of us.
Most of the problems that they have are problems that everyone else has, like how to save a picture to a phone, how to save an attachment from an email. If I take a picture, how do I send it?
He tells the story of one older woman who is very concerned about deleting pictures embedded in an email.
And she was afraid to delete the messages because she did not want to delete the pictures. And the pictures were the pictures that her daughter was sending of her granddaughter.
Gonzalez says he also remembers a time when he showed an older man how to use Google. The man was amazed that he could get answers to any questions. To him, crossing the digital divide was a necessity, but also a pleasure. Thomas Fudge, KPBS News.
It's the first spacewalk of the year aboard the International Space Station. Astronauts Kayla Barron and Raja Chari started working on installations this morning for the walk that took nearly 7 hours. The astronauts are installing modification kits that will make future solar array upgrades possible. The ISS has its days numbered, though. It's expected to be retired by the end of the decade. And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org.
Been made possible in part by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marco Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.